Mastering any skill takes practice, so my goal for this video isn't just to teach you how to carve in Orion Drift. I want to give you a tool that you can use to practice any type of carving so that you can master carving in Orion Drift on your own. And we're going to get to wall carving and ceiling carving, but I recommend that you stick around for floor carving even if you think you know how to do it, because understanding floor carving is key to understanding wall carving and ceiling carving even better. First, the most basic tip. You cannot carve on your fingertips, but you can carve on any other part of your hand. So just make sure you're never pointing your fingers into the surface you're trying to carve on. One thing you'll notice is if you just slide forward on the ground and put your hand in front of you and move it around, nothing will happen until you rotate it all the way around to your side, and that is when you will start carving. I want you to imagine this arrow that's always pointed in the direction that you're moving, and there's a line at the base, and what you have to do to carve is push your hand against the base of that arrow to change the direction of your movement. Now you can absolutely carve like this by just swinging your hands around your body, but if you want to go in a full circle, you're going to need to turn your body in real life. So you literally just put your hand out to your side and spin in a circle, and you can control the tightness of the turn by how fast you spin. Now, one bad habit you can get into with floor carving is starting with your hands slightly in front of the base of that arrow, and this is a problem because it means there will always be a slight delay before you actually start carving, which is fine on the floor, but ceiling carving is not so forgiving. So try to get in the habit of imagining the direction of your movement and putting your hand right on that line when you start your carve. And remember that the arrow points in the direction that you're currently moving, not the direction that you're facing. So once this clicks for you, it unlocks some really fun floor carves, including crossovers, which I don't know if they're useful, but they are fun. I definitely recommend jumping in and playing around with all of that, and let me know in the comments below if it actually improves your carving or your understanding of carving, but let's get right into how it applies to wall carving. Maybe the easiest way to get your first wall carve is to run alongside a wall, stick your arm straight up in the air, and then brush it backwards along the wall, almost in like a windmill motion, and this should have you carving straight up. And it works because if you imagine the arrow on the wall pointing in the direction of your movement, you're sticking your hand straight up and pushing against the base of that arrow to initiate a carve and change the direction of your movement. And carves make you stick to surfaces. But you can release a carve either by lifting your hand off the surface or just by stopping the turn, which is what allows you to do something like this as long as you don't push yourself away from the wall. Now in this situation, if you're dropping straight down a wall, your movement arrow is straight down, which means the base of that arrow is going to be straight in front of and behind you. So you just stick your arm out in front of yourself and pull it back around in a circle. And just like on the floor, you can control how big that circle is by how fast or slow you move your arm in real life. And just like on the floor, you can push on either side of the arrow with either hand, but it will move you either up or down instead of left or right. Once you realize that down carving is just the other direction, it kind of makes it a little easier to grasp what you should do. All right, let's talk ceiling carving. Now, it wouldn't be a ceiling carving tutorial if I didn't show you where to go to the ceiling carving practice area in the Master Gym. So this is that. It's in the parkour district. It's pretty easy to find, and this nice little low shelf is great for practicing ceiling carves. And once again, a reminder to not point your fingers into the ceiling. I prefer doing my thumb up towards the ceiling. You can also do palm up or the back of your hand up, but never your fingers, no fingers. Now with the ceiling carve, you need to be pushing against the base of that arrow the second you hit the ceiling, because otherwise you don't stick to the ceiling and you can't carve. One of the most common mistakes I see is people reaching up and in front of themselves, which means they're not going to get to the base of the arrow before they just fall off the ceiling. You need to carve to stick, and you need to start the carve exactly when you hit the ceiling. So if you're moving forward with your hand out in front of you, you basically have to turn all the way sideways before you hit the ceiling, and you're essentially doing a sideways ceiling carve at that point, which is totally fine, and it works. That's a ceiling carve, and you're doing it. Good job. But if you don't want to start turning way before you hit the ceiling, you want to have your hand out to your side and start turning right as you hit the ceiling. And there's also one more trick to ceiling carving, which is that gravity is still going to be trying to pull you off as you carve. So you want to start with your hand as low as possible without hitting your head. So what I do is fly up to the ceiling and hit my head, and then just slowly raise my hand until I feel my head come off. That is exactly where you want to start your carve. And actually, if you point your thrusters slightly forward, you can start turning and get a feeling for what the ceiling carve is going to feel like. The biggest difference is that when you're actually doing the carve, you're going to be slowly raising that hand, because if you don't, you will fall off the ceiling. And that is pretty much it. You can do bigger ceiling carves by turning slower, faster by turning faster. Basically everything that applies to floor carving applies to ceiling carving, except that it's all above your head, and you have to start it perfectly, and you have to raise your hand slowly throughout the carve. Let me know in the comments if this helped you with your carving, and if it didn't help you with your carving, don't tell me that, because that would make me sad.